You're listening to 15 Minutes, where we feature community leaders sharing what the rest of us should know but likely don't.
Hello, listeners. I'm Bela Musitz, host for this episode of the 15 Minutes Share Your Voice podcast, where we talk with top-notch law firms and attorneys about what it takes to grow a successful law practice. This episode is brought to you by Gladiator Law Marketing. They deliver tailor-made services to help your firm establish its objectives and maximize your growth potential. To have a successful marketing campaign and to make sure you're getting the best return on investment, your firm needs to have a better website and better content. Gladiator Law Marketing uses artificial intelligence, machine learning, and decades of experience to outperform the competition. To learn more, go to gladiatorlawmarketing.com, where you can schedule a free marketing consultation. Today's podcast guest is family law attorney Marc Garelick. Marc is a partner at Meyer, Olson, Lowy Meyers. He has extensive experience in high conflict custody, child and spousal support, paternity, and guardianship proceedings in contentious and sophisticated family law matters. Marc is particularly skilled with valuations of businesses and division and characterization of community and separate property assets. He also manages the law firm's office in Irvine, California. Welcome to the podcast, Marc.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, this is great. I'm glad you can join us today. So tell us a little bit more about the law firm.
Sure. So we are what I would consider a rather large family law firm. We have about 25 lawyers that are just dedicated to the practice of family law. And it's anything that would fall under the family courts umbrella. So child support, child custody, divorce, paternity actions, domestic violence, division of assets, modification of support, anything that would fall under that umbrella.
Got it. So this sounds like a highly specialized area of the law. You have your own court system to kind of even deal with it.
Our own code section, our own court system.
Yeah. So if I'm, let's say, going through a divorce, and we have a lot of property, maybe even a business, what's some words of advice that if I called you, you would give me?
Certainly. So, if you are at the initial phases of a divorce, and just kind of be mindful, the types of family law cases that I work with are generally the more contentious, the more complex. They have a lot of meat on them. There are issues that aren't easily resolved. If you have issues that are kind of no-brainers, like you guys have a house and that's it, you kind of want to address that issue right off the bat and identify what you have. So if it's just a house, you're going to look at the value of the house, what money was used to purchase the house, who's been paying the mortgage on the house, and from what source of fund did that come from, just kind of the nature of what you have. When it starts to get more complicated, you really need to kind of take a snapshot. And I like to say that there's a couple snapshots that you should take. You should take a snapshot when you first get married. You should take a snapshot with what's called the date of separation, which isn't a legal issue. It's kind of a date in time that everyone's going to look at. And then you should take a snapshot of what things look like right this second. And sometimes what happens is there are no assets at the beginning of the marriage, or there are a ton of assets at the beginning of the marriage. And that's kind of the first part of the conversation is what happened to those assets? Was there a prenuptial agreement that defined what was going to happen to those assets? Were there discussions or other types of contracts as to how property was going to be held? What were you going to do with that property? What the sources of money that those properties had and what they would do? And then you kind of want to do the same thing now and fast forward to, okay, when did you tell the other party and communicate that you no longer wanted to be married to that person anymore? And then how much time has happened since then? What have you done since that moment in time? And you're going to want to look at all your bank statements, all your financial statements, all of your income tax returns and business tax returns. And you're going to see kind of what you were doing with those monies, what you were spending those monies on, what debts you've incurred, what debts you have been paying down since that time period. And then you all need to have kind of a plan as to then how you're going to approach those assets, how you're going to value them, how you're going to determine your cash flow, and then subsequently your support, And then we talk about strategies of how we're going to approach that with the other side. Not every case is let's take you to trial and cut the other person's head off, right? Many times it's just kind of, it's complex and we need to figure out what's there and how much it's worth before we can decide how we're going to divide it. And there's a way to do that without spending hundreds or millions of dollars in litigation to get there.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like this preparatory part of, like you said, what was it like the day you got together, and what's it like the day you separated, and taking snapshots and getting all that information. Well, that sounds like could be a very, very complex and complicated and arduous task to pull all that stuff together.
It is. And generally, the more complex that your estate is, the more likely that you're going to need experts to help you with that. So you might need a forensic accountant, you might need a business valuation expert, you might need someone who is an expert that is a niche in whatever business that you're working in. You might need real estate appraisers. You might need a accountant that can look at, whatever complex cash flow that you have. You may even need a trust attorney who's going to come in and look at an irrevocable trust, or in, something that is revocable but might have strings attached to it, or something that's a completed gift. All of those come into play.
Yeah. So are all of those areas places in which you assist your clients with?
So we would retain those experts. So we work with generally a team of people that we are familiar with. And depending on what the issue is, we would direct them or have work with that person to use that expert.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense, because I wouldn't even know where to start to begin some of those things.
Yes.
Yeah. Excellent. So let's say we pull all that stuff together, and then what's the next step?
Certainly. So number one, the first step is filing for a divorce or a paternity action or whatever case that you're in. And there is a waiting period after that person files, where the person then gets to serve a response to that divorce. And it's California, so there's really no reason. You just get to get divorced. It's a no-fault state. After you do that, there is a disclosure period of time. Both parties are absolutely mandatory. They have to do something called a declaration of disclosure. And it means both parties have to disclose their income, their expenses, their assets, and their debts. And we do it in a form, and it can be as simple as complicated as the estate is. And generally from there, you can determine either, hey, we need to do a lot of discovery here, we need to work up a case, we need to hire all, expert A, B, and C to get your case done. Or we could say, hey, let's skip the nonsense. It's not that complicated. Let's get to a settlement conference or mediation and get this done. And California has a 6-month waiting period to get divorced. And all that means is that it will take 6 months from the date that you filed your petition until a judge will stamp your judgment to say that you are divorced. What that doesn't mean, though, is that you could have all of those things done on the same day. File your petition, they file the response, you do the disclosures, you sign the judgments, and then you're just holding on to it for 6 months. So a lot of times you'll see, like in the news, you'll see celebrities, and it's like they magically announce they're getting divorced, and the next day it's all done and signed, sealed, and delivered. Well, they've been talking about it for quite some time in that circumstance, and it's usually just they wait until that 6-month day, and then all of the paperwork happens at once. Yeah.
And let's say you can't come to an agreement with the person that you're divorcing. What's the road you go down then?
Yeah, so we kind of talked about the initial steps, and really the biggest road then is going to be discovery, because if you can't come to an agreement or come to an agreement quickly, that means that some discovery is going to need to happen where everyone can determine what's there, what the value is, what their contentions are, what the other person's contentions are, and how they deal with it. And while that's all happening, there might be a need for, we say, interim orders. So one side or both sides will file a motion, and we call it request for orders in family court, asking for temporary support or temporary custody orders, or a request for attorney's fees, or some initial discovery orders to compel somebody to produce something. All of those things kind of happen along that timeline until you get to a point where everyone says, we can't resolve it. I have everything I need. It's time to go to trial in this case. And that can happen quickly, or that can take years. And I just had a case that it took 12 years to get to that trial.
Wow.
So it can be a very long, extended process, especially if there are large assets that are increasing and decreasing in value quickly, or there's cash flow where it moves up and down with irregularity, or all, based off of commissions or sales of the economy or some other factor. It can take time to really narrow down the issues, figure out what the disagreement is, and then get in a place where both sides are ready to proceed with a trial.
Yeah. And when you say trial, is that just in front of a judge, or is that in, the traditional thing that people think about a trial with a jury and stuff?
Yeah, no, it's not Matlock. It's in front of a judge, and all family law, with maybe one very minor exception, is judge led and ruled upon. Some counties treat it differently than others counties. So, for instance, Orange and LA County are a good example. LA County has something called a master calendar. And that means that you'll be assigned a judge at the beginning of the case. That judge will deal with all of your temporary issues. And then if that judge determines that you are a long cause case and are complicated, they send you down to the supervising judge who says, okay, you're right. And they send you to a new judge that's going to be your trial judge. And then,
Got it.
versus Orange County, where that judge kind of follows you along, and he's the one who will handle your case throughout the entirety of it, unless he transfers or goes somewhere, but you're with that judge.
Yeah. Yeah. So even in a state, county to county, the way it works can vary, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That makes it nice and simple, doesn't it?
It does. And, anybody out there looking for a family law attorney, they're going to be looking for at least some experience that lawyer has in that county.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's a complex case, you're looking for someone who has the experience to handle a complex case, and then maybe has the ability to practice in, I'm based out of Orange County, but I have experience in Santa Clara and Alameda County and know their procedures. So they want to have some connection to another county. Otherwise, you're kind of lost in their procedure and how they do it differently.
Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't aware of that it can be, family law varies county to county. Now, is that true in most states in the United States, or is that just sort of a California specialty?
So most heavily populated states, I believe, have issues. California is a pretty unique family law jurisdiction. A lot of it's because of the nature of the cases that happen here, being celebrity and public interest figures. And then at the same time, it's community property, and we have what I would consider liberal child support guideline numbers and factors. So when a court's looking at how much child support should be determined, instead of having a set maximum number like some states like Texas do, California, it's based off of the income of the parties, which is kind of flipping it on its head. And there can be a lot more child support ordered here than in other cases, in other states.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. So this seems like a pretty competitive segment of the law. You at least you see lots of advertising on occasion for various different divorce attorneys, et cetera. What makes your firm sort of stand out from the other ones?
Sure. So, I would say that our firm is a real firm, meaning that we're going to have resources to handle a lot of discovery, a lot of complex issues, the ability to deal with them, deal with a multi-day trial and know how to put that trial on, versus a lot of family law practitioners who maybe specialize in more straightforward cases that are mediated and have more straightforward assets. And, if you do have those complex issues, you need to be looking at what type of firm you are hiring, not just necessarily a family law. It's very important to have the expertise that's needed to put on real litigation.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So how do I figure out whether a law firm has this skill in handling these complex cases? Is there a way for me to figure that out as a layperson, dialing up 5 different law firms to see who's going to handle my divorce?
It's difficult, and I don't think that there is any easy way to do it. Certainly go to kind of the internet and see what reviews people have of others and what that firm consists of, and how many associates or partners they have. But what I really suggest is that you just meet with a few family law firms.
Yeah.
You go out there because it's a very personal type of law. You have to feel comfortable with the person. They have to be able to kind of identify your issues and your life, and you have to have confidence that they'll be able to put on your case and move it forward in the right way. And there are lots of qualified family law attorneys, but maybe they aren't qualified in handling, a complex, irrevocable trust where people have been putting their income in for the last 20 years and no one knows how to divide it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good advice, because this is clearly, a stressful, emotional time for your clients. So having that confidence and trust in the person you're working with is probably a very important factor in making that decision.
Absolutely. And I would also say it really depends on who your soon to be ex-spouse is as well. If you have someone who maybe has a personality disorder, which we find to be very common in our area, and they might be incapable of, seeing the world beyond the way they see it, and maybe not reasonable,
Yeah.
you're going to be in for a fight with that person. And you have to kind of take a look at that right off the bat and say, okay, I want somebody who is able to understand that, knows how to deal with that person, negotiate with that person, or make sure that person faces the consequences that they need to face in order to move your case forward and get it done.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can get stuck real easily in just the spinning wheel of the judicial system and be around for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you a couple of maybe broader questions. What made you go into this area of specialization in the law?
So, I come from a family of accountants, tax attorneys. So I
Okay.
think that was the direction that I was looking for when I was going into law school. But I had an undergraduate degree in psychology, and I took a
Mm,
family law class in law school that happened to be taught by two very famous judges in LA. And it just sparked that interest that, this is an area where I could make an impact in actual people's lives.
yeah.
Uh, maybe I think people see divorce as a nasty, ugly business, but I see it more as getting somebody out of a really bad spot and maybe into a good spot, and helping them and be able to make a difference in not just their lives, their kids' lives, maybe how they approach the future. And I think for me, it's kind of been the more satisfying type of law out there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a wonderful answer. And that, this is meaningful to you. And that's great, because, right, everyone talks about having a career or a job that has meaning to you personally.
Right.
And so you get satisfaction out of this, and that's wonderful. Yeah. Now, what when you got out of law school, did you join this firm right away, or were you at another firm and then found your niche someplace else?
So actually, I started as a law clerk at this firm.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah,
Wow.
so it's been some time, and when you're coming out of law school and you don't know what area of law to do, it's always good to be a law clerk or clerk someplace or in an office someplace to see what it's like. And it's a good way in being a gateway to get a job into family law. There is a huge, huge need for family law lawyers, especially in California. It's a very underserved
Mm,
market, very underserved population. And there is just a need for people who can understand it and appreciate it and have the right personality and affect to handle family law. So if you're interested in family law, there are a lot of opportunities out there.
yeah. So being a layperson, I've heard the term law clerk many times, but I'm not sure I know what it means. What does a law clerk mean?
So think like someone who is in law school, hasn't yet passed the bar, is on the path to passing a bar, and is working in a law firm, not doing necessarily legal advice, but working in maybe drafting some paperwork or maybe handling some discovery components of it, so they can get a feel of what it's like to work in that type of law firm.
Got it. Got it. All right. That's under. I understand it now. Thank you. Uh, so how do you guys, how do you guys find your clients? How does that work?
Generally, it's referral based. Uh, I think reputation's important,
Yeah.
and I hope I put out the right reputation out there in the world. And really, I would tell you, it's more of whether the client is a right fit for the firm.
Mm.
We're certainly not cheap. We certainly don't handle kind of your everyday family law matter. So I don't want you to retain us unless we are the right firm for you to retain and the right firm to handle your case. Uh, if people come to us and I think it's not that complex, I'll let them know my thoughts of where I think their case should go. And I have a various list of attorneys who I think are great and can handle it.
Excellent. Excellent. That makes a lot of sense. So during your career, once you passed the bar, you start practicing. Was there like a turning point there where, one day, you said to yourself, boy, did I make the right decision? This is really great.
Yeah, I think there was. So our senior partner, her name is Lisa Meyer. She is an absolutely amazing attorney in many aspects. And she asked me, as I think I was a law clerk, to sit in a deposition and kind of help her out. And really, it was just me kind of making sure the exhibits were right and handling passing the exhibits and the notes over to her. Maybe there was a question that I thought she should ask. And I sat there and I listened to her for 8 hours. And it was probably the most impressive way of being able to get information out of the other side in that deposition to advantage the client and to really, move a case along in a way that, I had no idea someone could ask questions like that.
Yeah.
And I think I was hooked after that and seeing her kind of in action and doing those things.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like she was a great role model as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So where can our listeners find out more about your firm and how to contact you guys?
Sure. They can check out our website. It's molmfamlaw.com, molmfamlaw.com. Or they can give our office a call if they're interested in meeting, and our number is 949-397-3977.
Great. I will make sure all of that information is in the show notes. Marc, is there something that I have not asked you that I should have, or something additional you'd like to share with our listeners?
No, I just think that's, is I think a word of advice out there to people who may be getting divorced or are thinking about getting a divorce. A lot of what makes a divorce complicated is when a person doesn't know what's going on in their own life. And so the best advice I can give to somebody who's thinking about it or is concerned that the other party might be doing it is to get educated. Understand what your finances are, understand your situation, understand how things are done. So when you do get into the situation and it's happening, you're prepared.
Well, that's a great way of wrapping up this podcast. Marc, thank you so much for being a great guest on the podcast. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to 15 Minutes. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.